Good morning. Welcome back to the Education Theater for our latest session. This one presented by our Workshop Council. The PDMI Workshop Council is actually the original PDMI Council, the very first council when we started back in, I think we started the council in 2019, about a year after we kicked off the association. And they're always bringing us great content, great ideas throughout the year, both in webinar form and here live in San Diego and Miami. So thank you to the Workshop Council, and thank you to our sponsor of our education, Bluewater. We know that Bluewater's had a tough week. You guys are fighting the good fight. Thankfully, we've heard, I think you guys got all your stuff cleared out of the facilities there in Clearwater. So hopefully the hurricane is lighter than expected. So thank you for your support. And Bluewater has a message for you, as they've had at the start of every session, so let's see that now.
Hey guys, Randy Jackson here.
Welcome to the future of pain relief.
At Tommy John, a lot goes into our underwear before you do.
But now I've found my bubbly side with SodaStream.
Out!
Philips Air Fryer is the original and the very best.
Kid Rock!
Hey, why is everybody so loud in infomercials?
But wait, there's more!
Yeah.
Woo!
So visit Bluewater at table 3. Actually, they all might be in here, so you could probably stop by and say hi. So executing a campaign across CTV, streaming, and linear TV is our topic today. Mike Battisto of Target+Response, president of Target+Response, is the chair of our Workshop Council, and he'll be helming the group through a great conversation. So Mike, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everybody for showing up. As Tom said, we've got a panel to discuss cross-channel executing campaigns across different channels, CTV, streaming, linear TV. Our speakers for today are, to my left, Joseph Gray, who's the founder of DRMetrix and the SVP of Direct Response at iSpot. He's going to be our measurement and attribution expert. And then in the middle, we've got Patrick Raymond, Vice President of Strategy and Execution West Coast at Bluewater. He's our creative execution expert. And then at the end, we've got J.R. McElroy, Head of Performance Media at AudienceXpress, and she's our media planning and placement expert today. So let's go on. To begin, we're going to show you a short video to kind of set the stage for the panelist discussion.
How do you measure and attribute TV advertising spend to business outcomes? Traditional methods are typically flawed and don't reveal the causal impact of TV. This keeps you from having full control of your TV ad strategy.
We help businesses reach the right crowd through TV and streaming content. We use data to take your campaign to the next level and put your ad in front of your most likely customers.
Traditional makeup can make you look older, while Breeze is specially designed for maturing skin, helping it to look smooth and so much younger.
It's not caked on like the regular makeup.
Call or go to getbreeze.com now.
I have struggled to find coverage that covers my dark spots and uneven skin tone. With the Breeze, you can see it covering the flaws instantly.
Now there's a coverage to look flawless instantly. Luminous Breeze is the #1 selling airbrush makeup. Find Luminous Breeze Airbrush at getbreeze.com to try completely risk-free for 30 days for just $19.95 and get free shipping.
Step into the light and embrace your kingdom. Introducing the Disney Lion King collection from Sir John and Luminous Cosmetics, with 8 highly pigmented limited edition pieces inspired by the African landscape to bring out your inner lion. Step into the light and embrace your kingdom with the Lion King collection from Sir John and Luminous.
That's the sound you crave, and the outdoor cooking fun and flavor that's better on a Blackstone. From tailgating to the patio, and even on-the-go adventures, it's better on a Blackstone. All your traditional grill favorites, and so much more. Breakfast? Better. Lunch? Better. Dinner? Yeah, it's better. Go to your nearest Blackstone retailer, or log on to blackstoneproducts.com and see the full line of Blackstones.
Okay, so we're going to do things a little bit different. As you can see, it's pretty subtle, the changes that occur as you move across different channels. So what we're going to do is have each of the speakers kind of preface or talk about their specific areas and help you understand what those subtleties, and then we'll do some Q&A. So up first, we'll start with the end in mind, and I'll pass it off to Joseph to talk about measurement and attribution. Joseph?
Thank you very much. All right, let's cue up the PowerPoint here. There we go. Let's go back one slide here. Executing across channels, that's all right. I think we're missing my first slide. We'll just start with this. So today I'm going to talk about automated content recognition, which is kind of bringing in the next wave of attribution technology to the industry. But before I get into that, I just want to pay my respects to the traditional last touch attribution approach that DR advertisers have been using for years. 800 numbers assigned uniquely to different stations. And you have to remember, this model's been around for maybe 50 plus years. And when you compare the results of executing that kind of last touch attribution model to traditional like Nielsen metrics, DR advertisers have had a lot of success. And we know that if we were to lean in on Nielsen gross rating points and impressions historically to sort of guide and inform our media buying decisions, it would have been disastrous because we've all tried it. But I say even through today, if you're using 800 as a call to action and it's not a digitally native type of call to action, you know, last touch attribution is definitely the way to go. But we've also seen other types of attribution evolve over the course of time. Media mix modeling, which is not a very quick, immediate approach to attribution that's very data and time intensive. And of course, everyone's familiar with spike analysis. This has been around for a while. I don't know if you can see it well enough, but on the bottom of that slide, there is a chart that's showing the correlation between ad exposure at the consumer household and the visit to like a digitally native website type of scenario. When you're looking at exposures to an ad across linear, CTV, or streaming at the household level, which is made possible by smart TVs running automated content recognition on the smart TV. You have the household IP address, and you can also, with a pixel, understand when that same household IP responds to a digitally native website like an Expedia.com or a Chewy or any of these types of advertisers. And we know how long it takes generally before these advertisers, these consumers rather, respond to those ad placements. Most of the response is outside of a 5-minute window. And in fact, with spike analysis, you could be missing 90% or misallocating 90% of the consumer response. So that has become a big issue, especially when you add the complexities of CTV and streaming on top of the linear challenges that we have. So every year, DRMetrix publishes an industry study, which you can download from our website. And for many years now, I've included a little section about attribution. Frame of reference, DRMetrix never really involved itself in attribution. And even today, DRMetrix as an entity doesn't really offer attribution. I've written about this from an unbiased perspective for many years before selling to iSpot.tv. And so now I have a little bit of an understanding of this ACR attribution. But years leading up to that, I've always had some issues with probabilistic spike analysis. And I was talking to an attribution company at one point, and I said to them, you know, as DR advertisers, we go out and buy scatter market day part inventory, and we don't have control over when our spots run necessarily. So we're going to have a lot of crossover where spots are running across multiple networks at the same time. So how do you do spike analysis? How do you figure out how to attribute when you have multiple networks that are saying, hey, that's my lead, give me credit, no, give me credit. And I was told that they would just basically take the percentage of response where there wasn't a conflict, and they'd use that to create kind of a weight. So when they did have conflicts, they'd know how to attribute the leads. So every year, I take the top, 30 or some odd digitally native campaigns, and we track the airings. You could see here for imprint, hundreds of thousands of airings, of course, and over 90% of those airings have a conflict where within a 5-minute delta, you have multiple networks all vying for credit for that specific lead. And when there is a conflict, the average number of networks saying, give me credit, no, give me credit, is 13 networks. So, when you get into these larger digitally native campaigns, this is another vantage point on why spike analysis really doesn't work well. So I'm going to move on, and we're going to talk more about ACR for just a second. So as these smart TVs started to roll out in the marketplace a number of years ago and had onboard ACR, which is the ability of the smart TV to track the ads that are running. You had quotes like this from Forbes. Everyone was pretty excited about what the potential of this would one day become. And we've been waiting, of course, for that critical mass to occur. And I think we're there at this point, and I'm going to show you some numbers here. And these are my best guesses. So I know that everyone's probably aware that Vizio's been syndicating their data for a number of years, and there are numerous attribution providers that will lean on Inscape Vizio. I think there are around 24 million opt-in devices in the US that are contributing to that kind of deterministic data. LG, another company that's been syndicating their data, over 20 million devices in the US. Samsung is a bit of a walled garden, but they're, no question, 800-pound gorilla in the ACR TV space. Really hard to find some numbers that were published, but I do know that from a report in July of 2018, Samsung actually disclosed how many US smart TVs they had sold, and then they also disclosed that they were growing at about 500,000 units a month. So they could be in the 60 million device range at this point, just based on that extrapolation. Roku has recently entered the space and started to make their data available to third parties, attribution aggregators, if you will. And we don't have numbers yet on how many Roku smart TVs there are out in the marketplace, but it's probably somewhere in the Vizio LG or greater range. And of course, Roku has a lot of side devices, Roku streaming sticks and the like. They don't necessarily run ACR, but there's a lot of great data that can come from those. They have over 80 million global active accounts as of 2024. And adding to all this deterministic data, you have millions of smart boxes from the likes of Spectrum, Charter, Comcast. TiVo's been around for a number of years. TiVo is entering the smart TV space. There will be TiVo branded TVs that'll be out there. And TiVo's always made their data available to third parties. So that'll build on top of everything else that you're seeing here. So all of this considered, third-party attribution companies now are getting to a level of scale, aggregating, surpassing 80 million devices now that are capable of tracking the exposures at the consumer household. And then for digitally native campaigns with pixels, you can put those two pieces of data together, and you have the ability to measure business outcomes tied to all of these different forms of TV delivery. So across, again, streaming, CTV, and linear, you have with ACR, as we've said, the IP exposure data You can tie that to the business outcomes, which I mentioned. We can also see things with unified measurement where you bring all this together. You can see audience deduplication. How is CTV working with streaming, working with linear? Where do you have efficiency and maybe where you have inefficiency? These things can be determined. And again, with these ACR data sets today, you really can get a holistic view of your video investments across all of these different methods of delivery. And then finally, if your attribution partner is integrated with literally hundreds of streaming publishers and DSPs, then you can really see this unified picture that I think everyone's been waiting for. And this is essentially what's happening in the space. Now, you do have a situation where a lot of media vendors are offering their own attribution solutions, but that leads to essentially broken silos where multiple media vendors are fighting for credit over the same customers. That's not unified measurement. That's a bit of a chaotic situation. So forward-thinking marketers, they want to break down and eliminate those silos and use a digital-like approach with their TV ad measurement, which is multi-touch attribution. You want to understand all the touch points that the consumer had before they responded, and you want to give fractionalized credit, just like you do in digital marketing, to the different CTV, streaming, and linear touch points along the way. So all of this is available today, believe it or not, because ACR has really come into its own, and it's at a point of scale that we haven't seen historically. And we have, for the first time, high-quality measurement-grade data, the actionable insights, lift for smarter allocations, the ability to do real-time optimization of our media, and also predictive analytics for future planning. Patrick, I'm going to hand this over to you, and Patrick's going to talk to us about creative strategies.
Thanks for that. It's amazing. So, my area of expertise is in the creative space, and what's been exciting to watch over the last, 15 years now, how all this has evolved, is, it used to be obviously in linear. We were so excited about results when we would test something in a week, and you'd see success, you wouldn't see success, you'd celebrate, you wouldn't. But what's really happened is on the creative side, like I found myself, like if I could go back and redo my career now, I probably would want to be a psychologist, I think, because that's what I find myself doing is actually like taking all this great data, people like Joseph, amazing people at our agency that have that kind of thought behind it, and give us as creatives tools to really kind of dive into a strategy. We used to just kind of come up with a great idea, and we're like, let's do that. These days, we can actually get into the psychology of somebody, or whoever our audience is, and think about what is that thing that's going to hit the lever. And that's really exciting to see. So I threw a few different examples out of creatives over the last few years. Some that were CTV, geared to that, some towards streaming, some towards the linear platform. But at the end of the day, from our perspective, like we just want results, and a lot of the time those creatives they'll air across all platforms. That's up to great people like Jeanne next to me, who think about all of those things. But in the case of like the Disney collaboration that I shared, on the outset we were like, okay, we're doing this to air on OTT across Ulta, Disney's platforms, but we're also had a full linear strategy that tied into the release of a film. And it was a great opportunity. It was exciting to see the content that could be, I lost my slide. Sorry.
Oh, there it is.
There you go. exciting to see that the unique content that we were able to put together could resonate across so many different platforms, and I think that's, as creatives, we do an execution on a spot, and it's going to be successful here. We're going to figure out where we're going to pull the levers here and there. Is it going to work better on CTV? Is it what's going to make it perform on the linear platform? But at the end of the day, there's really no differences from our side other than what's the call to action. How is that articulated on the platforms? Again, we'll talk to great people on the media side to help us figure what that is. But the main thing that we can do as creatives is create a concept, create a library of content around it that we can make changes quickly, which is very important when we get that data, and turn it around, look at the data, re-execute, until you just hit that sweet spot. And I've kind of taken a lot of what I've learned on the social creative side, which isn't something we're necessarily talking about today, but in social, we'll do organic content. We'll put up a whole slew of ads, and we know immediately what's working, what hooks are working, what is it in that creative that's hitting that mark, and we can change it that day, put it right back up, get response. And I've tried to take that thinking a lot more into what we're doing and on the linear side, because it's really hard to turn a creative around in a couple of days to get that back up on the air. But that's what the biggest changes, I think, have been, and how we think as creatives, is being very nimble, reacting quicker, being able to actually listen to the people that are around us telling us, this is what the data's telling us, this is what we're seeing, we're going to push this lever, and ask questions. It's probably a lot more collaborative. None of us have the right answers, but all we can do is hope for success.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. And thank you guys for joining today. I'm really excited to be here with these great colleagues of mine on stage to really kind of dive into how we execute multi-channel. And I have to tell you, over the past couple of days, I've been chatting with a bunch of folks, and it's really crazy. There's a lot of buzz going on now about streaming and CTV. A lot of people are asking questions like, when and how should I execute with CTV or streaming? Should I be going fast channels? Should I be going pub direct? What about my creative length, and what's the impact on my ROAS? And I think all of these questions are really great to be asking, and it's really making me excited to be in the industry right now, specifically the performance media industry. We're really going through an evolution of video, and it's really noticeable because you can almost see almost every brand these days has some sort of performance strategy within their overall media mix. And the reason why that is because we have so many more tools at our fingertips to really be able to establish and engage with our audiences where they're watching their content. The thing is just because we have all these tools, should we be deploying all of them? Should we be utilizing all of them? When's the best time to utilize them? And to your point, Patrick, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's really about understanding what your KPI is. I think the video landscape has been changing drastically over the past 15 years, and it's been like super turbocharged the past 3 years, especially with COVID, where a lot of people started to adopt new viewership habits, particularly around streaming. I know coming out of COVID, my 80-year-old parents can't live without their Netflix or their Max. They can't tell you whether they're watching it on a smart TV or a Chromecast or a Roku, but they know how to take the remote and get to that app and press send. I will not talk to you about them figuring out passwords. That's a whole other problem for me. But they're in it to win it now. And I think that's a lot of what's going on out there. And while it's all exciting, it can be really daunting and overwhelming. And I think as we work forward to this multi-channel approach, having a strategy is key, and understanding what the KPI is per channel is paramount. At AudienceXpress, we really like to look at a full funnel strategy that starts with brand awareness, really utilizing the top of the funnel to prime your audience, that TV, priming your audience through TV, where you have the broadest way to reach them. And then from there, it's about understanding that exposure data that you're getting through television and being able to expand that reach as you narrow down to middle of the funnel, where you have CTV and streaming. And what's great about CTV and streaming, it has all the great benefits of TV, but with the targetability and precision of digital. So there you really have an opportunity to speak to your audience and hone in on them to really further that conversation. And then ultimately trying to bring it down and like reconnecting with those same users by retargeting to them on display, where there's a 70% chance they're more likely to convert to a paying customer. Now, I'm not saying you have to do the full funnel, but I think it's really important to understand the funnel and figure out which part of the funnel is going to be working best for you and how they marry together, and working with partners, whether they're agencies or vendors, that can understand the data and can really be consultative with you on how to toggle between the two. So once you have your strategy, it's really about how are you really going to drive that performance, right? And we really look at driving it at every step. And these are really 4 key steps that we think are important in a campaign. And it starts with targeting, because let's face it, we can target. How we target can vary, and it doesn't have to be the same, and it really is based on the product or service that you're trying to get out and based on the channel that you're trying to reach. From a target perspective, we always start with data, right? You can use your first-party data, third-party data, a vendor's data, second-party data, to establish that target. You can also look to be contextual, right? It doesn't have to be that deep. It can be based on genre, based on device, based on if you're trying to skew female or male or publisher. And then there's also DMA targeting, knowing where your audience is, what type of creative, Patrick, that may speak to one part of the country versus the other. Perhaps you're copy splitting, deploying multiple creatives at the same time, testing to see which is working, which is not working. And then also, this is like my sweet spot. I love talking about it, and my team probably hates me talking about it at this point. They're sick of it. But targeting by incremental reach. I think that is really key right now, especially as we're looking at multi-channel, is understanding what your reach is and being able to figure out how you can target to get that incrementality and to try to get it at the most efficient place where it's driving your results. And then once you've figured out your targeting, right, you start airing everything, you're looking at your attribution. I know a lot of people in this room probably have their own proprietary attribution, which is great, or they work with agencies who have it. You can also work with like third-party vendors, so you're not necessarily grading your own homework all the time. And then you have pixels, right? I know pixels can sometimes be a dirty word. People are like, I have too many pixels over everything. But pixels really do help show where the consumer and viewer are going and kind of give you more data points. And once you're looking at that attribution, now it's time to act, right? It's really time to optimize based on what you're seeing. And I think at this step, it's really key to work with partners that can understand the data and help be consultative with you and really be able to toggle between the channels kind of seamlessly, so you're really in real time able to figure out the best way to deploy each channel. For example, you may be doing a national campaign and you can look at your TV attribution and see there's certain parts of the country that may not be doing as well. Well, maybe that's the time to take some streaming and look and do a DMA approach and really go into those markets where you may need a little bolster to see what it does. I don't think there's a tried and true way right now. I think it's really about trying to incorporate these different channels into your media buy and understand what the benefits they are to you. Because let's face it, it's continuing to grow this way where we are a multi-channel viewing landscape. And then last, of course, reporting, right? Understanding, having that transparency, understanding where your spots are airing, and understanding the reach and frequency. Reach and frequency is key, I think, as you move forward. You want to make sure you're reaching the right people. You also want to make sure you're not spending a lot of money reaching the same exact people over and over and trying to get that net new advertiser can be expensive if you're looking at a one-channel approach. Understanding your reach and your frequency may allow you to find not only net new customers, but also some other efficiencies you might not have been thinking about. So, again, I don't think I've solved the world's problems, and I don't think we're all going to solve them today. I think we're asking a lot more questions out there. But I think what's exciting to me and really important is that we're all in it together, and we should really be working together in partnership and trying to figure it out. As I said before, there's no one size fits all, and it's really important that you work with partners that can be consultative, that have the tech and have the data to help drive those insights and results that you need. So with that, I'm gonna pass this back over to Mike so we can engage in some great conversation.
I'd like to thank my panelists. Thanks for giving us a bit intro. Now we're gonna move to more of a panel discussion. I'll challenge you with some questions that are not gonna be the ones that I showed you already. But it'll allow us to get a little bit more into the details. So let me ask you guys this. As you're approaching each of your disciplines, if I'm an advertiser out there and I'm only working on one of these channels, linear, CTV, streaming, if I'm only doing one of these, can I just take my same strategic approach and apply it and just incrementally add one or two? Are there differences between the two for each of your disciplines? And if there are differences, can you give me like one or two specifics that the audience would like to know or share? And I can start with Patrick.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, so you're basically saying like durations, platforms.
Yeah. Say I'm doing a linear campaign right now, and I want to add streaming.
Yeah. Sure.
So here's my commercial. I can just throw it up there.
That's probably
I'll jump in here. I don't think it is, what you're doing in TV is the same as what you're doing in CTV, even though it is all television. I think there's differences within the platforms. First and foremost, I know there's a lot of people out there that use 120s. 120s are not necessarily the most favorable spot that you see in streaming or CTV, and it's quite hard to get them on air. Not that it's not possible, and again, I preface everything with it's evolving. So what I say today could change in a year from now when we meet back up here. But I also think I use this example of depending on your product, right? It really starts with understanding the target and your product and what you're trying to get out of it. And let's just say you have battery-operated ceiling fan, right? You may not want to approach going into CTV airing on Apple TVs because the composition of Apple TVs may not lend itself to a bunch of people that may want to buy, the battery-operated fans. That might not be the right device to be airing on. Or maybe you just don't want to run full network, right? Because if you're targeting, maybe they're within the Apple device, there's a publisher or there's an app that works. But you have to be a little bit more deploying different types of targeting to understand what you're looking to do, whether it be looking at through a contextual lens, using the data to drive what you're doing, where I think when you're in TV, it's a little bit more kind of spray and pray, right? And I think we have the ability, like I mentioned, to be targeted and have that precision, and is really to take a step back and think what you're trying to achieve. I will also say, I don't think you need to be super uber targeted because you can be uber targeted in streaming or CTV. I like to think at AudienceXpress, we like to cast a wider, smarter net, right? We use data and we use Comcast viewership data to really, that is based off of deterministic, but then we nationalize it out for more of a probabilistic look to really be smarter about where we're placing those ads within streaming. But again, it's not a one-for-one. I think it's really a build. And again, working with vendors that can help you understand what you're getting out of each of those channels and build upon it is really important.
Now I'll jump in. Okay. So a little bit of background there. So yeah, I think when somebody comes in and they want to do a certain spot, I think the thing is we talk to our media side, our great people that know analytics inside of our agency. One great thing that we've done is we've taken creatives over many years and seen what call to actions are working, what points in a creative are people actually hitting the lever. So we've been able to do that over the last year, and we can actually see historically what's worked and what's not. Obviously, our time is evolving, things change, but we can actually do things that we couldn't do 10 years ago and be like, okay, we're going to create a creative with these things in mind, knowing that if we're doing a pressure cooker, that at this particular point in a 2-minute or a 1-minute, we need to do this particular thing. Before it was not exactly that finite, but we can do that now, which is exciting. So if you're coming into the space and you're thinking, okay, I want to try out linear, I think that's a plausible thing, but I think you got to also think about who's your buyer, what's your demographic, if it's people that are in where's your viewers, but to your point also, just because we've developed a spot doesn't mean that our media buyers can't put that on a CTV space. So it works across.
And don't treat CTV or streaming the same way you treat linear. You miss all the benefit if you do that, of course. Streaming and CTV are addressable. You have that IP correlation between the delivery of the ad and the eventual consumer response. Again, the pixel comes into play. That's not as easy with linear as it is with these more digitally native CTV and streaming platforms. So attribution is much easier with streaming and CTV. Bringing that all into the same focus as linear and understanding the correlation between those deliveries, that's a challenge, but it can be addressed today, thankfully.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, then let's start talking about KPIs and ROI. As we're moving into a multi-channel type of execution, how do you measure? How do you target? How do you make the whole more valuable than each of the piece? Can I take my KPIs and lower them because I move to more of a cross-channel? Do I tailor? How do you make it more effective when you do a cross-channel campaign? Does anyone wanna?
So I'll go in again. Again, for us, right, especially at AudienceXpress, where we do have this rich data and we do have visibility across the multi-channels, we like to understand whether you're airing on linear with us or not. We have the ability, based on our Comcast viewership data, set-top box and user data, to see where viewers are watching your spot on a national campaign, right? Because we have that Comcast footprint to look at. And based on that, deterministic, then we probabilistically look at it to figure out where your viewers are. We can understand how much you're reaching, how much frequency it is, kind of put a cost per point against that reach to understand, are you maxing out? And where can we go in streaming to maybe find those net new viewers? And using this data to be able to predict where they are, looking at viewers that may only have seen a limited amount of time, like maybe 6 times within the campaign or not at all, and then really go out and try to target them in CTV, and then look at the results and understand the incrementality that you have. And based on that, that can garner something successful or not. They also can garner the cost. So is that additional cost per reach point more efficient? And is that driving net new for you? Again, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't predict exactly what that outcome's going to be, but I do think it's important to understand that incrementality, because let's face it, things are getting smaller and everything's getting fragmented. So you really need to be able to utilize that data to understand what direction your audience is going.
Yeah, it's about scale. You want to be able to scale beyond just strictly linear. A lot of the audience is maybe not engaging with linear viewing the way they do in CTV and streaming. Demographics might be different on the CTV and streaming side. You want to understand how these different approaches are working, supporting one another. That's the whole concept behind unified measurement. But it's about scale, right? Because we can possibly achieve our KPI goals, but we can grow the business much larger. We can reach audiences that maybe we can't reach through linear by itself.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, I think going back to what I said initially about the different kinds of creative, when we approach a campaign, I urge everybody that involved, our clients, our teams, think about it as a creative library. We can put a campaign together, but think if we're doing something in programmatic or versus linear, we may need to shift who the talent is, because you may want to be targeting something a little different. So how can we shoot the content in a way that's very nimble and be able to kind of adjust quickly, react quickly? Who's consuming the content? So wherever we can do that, I'm a big fan of creating libraries of content where we can react quickly.
Yeah, it makes sense. And to that point, I think it's really important to partner with people, whether it's the creative side, whether it's the media side, to be able to optimize and have the technology to be able to optimize in real time based on what they're seeing, right? So it's not like a static set it and forget it. It's, oh, this is malleable. I'm seeing this result. Let's try this, or let's do this. Let's deploy these tactics to see what can happen. Because I'm going to venture to say not everyone has the answer. There is no secret sauce right now. We're really just trying to figure it out collectively together and what those best practices are.
Okay, and you guys keep talking about how there's targetability. It changes as you move across channels. What's how do you identify, or does if I advertise on as I increase, does one channel, could it impact the response rates in other channels? And how to identify those targets?
Yeah, so we had an advertiser, an insurance company coming to us looking to increase sales leads and policies written, and they wanted to take a two-prong approach, again, looking at television as well as CTV. And we did go into TV, kind of doing that priming that I talked about, but then we did target a little bit deeper in the streaming or the CTV space, where we looked at age and income and in the market for financial services. And what we were able to see during this kind of 1-2 approach running seamlessly together was that they saw a 73% lift in sales leads and a 26% increase in policy written. And anecdotally, they had told us when they had run just TV alone, they had not seen that. So I think there's something to be said. And you have to work, again, it's really about working close. We're all in this, it's all a partnership. So it's really working close together to understand the data that you're seeing and being able to kind of optimize while it's going on to garner those really good results. So we were happy with that. And I think that's a really good approach, right, to see how we can layer the two channels to drive the business forward.
Do you have anything to add on that?
No, just to reiterate, so CTV and streaming are addressable. which is what Jared was just referring to, of course. You can kind of hyper-target that audience. You're going to see correlations in unified measurement between how the linear campaign is supporting CTV and streaming. You're going to see the additional audiences that you're reaching. Hopefully, you're able to understand where you're oversaturating and make those adjustments on the CTV and streaming side where you have those controls. And then everything starts to, if you're using the data, you're reacting to the data properly, everything starts to support, and you have the right balance in terms of reach and frequency. And that's always been the challenge, because if you're just buying DR and you're just buying whatever kind of media you can get at a good rate, and you're doing lots and lots of frequency, these campaigns really start to peter out. They just don't sustain themselves. You can't get the scale.
But to your point, I think you need to have a little bit of patience too, right? I think in a lot of the DR space, you're looking for like quick reaction. You want to know an answer the week after, and sometimes it takes a little bit to build. Sometimes you have to have a little bit patience, and the results in the end can yield a lot larger than what you would do if you're so quick to knee-jerk pull something off. And I think that's also really important when you're doing it. And I don't want to discredit, like, results are important, you need to have them, but it's more in this testing level. I think there needs to be a little bit more A and B testing and getting comfortable with it, because I just don't know if you can continue to keep doing the same thing as everything else is evolving.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, panelists.
I have one more.
Sure.
I was just going to add to that. I was just going to use an example, again, back to social, which we're not talking about, but it's a good example. I've had clients who are spending $1 million a month on social, and they think, okay, well, wow, this is amazing. Let's take down our TV lever. Let's take that down significantly. And it's just, I'm like, why would you do that? Because the TV is driving everything. Yeah. So it's the same thing. I think it's like having the levers of where what we're doing with streaming, what we're doing with CTV, what we're doing with linear. Like how does, it may be one campaign is doing one thing, one's doing the other, but you have to kind of be looking at it holistically. You can't just be looking at one particular thing anymore.
Yeah, and in unified measurement, you're grabbing those other video delivery mediums. You're grabbing data from the social video, et cetera, and you're understanding how that's being supported, how the interplay, because you have the ability to have the consumer journey understood. They were exposed on social video, then they were exposed to X, Y, and Z on linear, then there's some CTV and some streaming in the mix, and then they responded. I mean, that's powerful information to have. That's where what you get from deterministic approaches, right?
Yeah, like the Blackstone is a good example. That campaign's done extraordinarily well over the years, but the brand ambassador campaigns that have come out of that and just helped driven more TV, more excitement around the brand. Like that's the exciting thing about what we're doing, is seeing how all that is. And I think it's true across what we're doing on CTV linear.
Yeah, well, and again, to that point, when I talk about the funnel, it's like when you have that CTV, retargeting that same user in display where they're more likely to do that point of purchase because they've been canvassed the whole way down. Again, there's so many different options out there right now, so I think it's not easy. Like, I don't think this is easy in any way, shape, or form, but I think it's really about engaging and trying to understand and meet the audience where they are and trying to relate it all back up with data and technology to your product to understand what's working for your campaigns.
Yep, I get it, because when you expose the message versus when someone's in a position to actually respond to the message isn't always the same.
Yep.
So at this point, let's open up to Q&A to the audience. Tom?
Any questions for the panel? Anyone?
It's Wednesday. I don't know. It was a rough night last night. The Padres won. I don't know.
It's pretty good, but maybe...
I blame you and NBC.
Maybe they missed
party
something.
last night.
All right. You have anything else on your docket there, Mike? No?
I can ask one more question. We can talk about
Mike's
that.
got another question.
As we move into, because as I touched in, you keep saying that you have to look at it holistically, and it did bring to mind to me the concept of when someone, where you see a commercial builds that impression, but isn't always is the best at building the impression, but isn't always the best place for me to respond. Versus like online streaming, you probably are right there. It's easy to click on it. So can you guys elaborate on that at all?
Well, that's the problem with last touch is you're giving credit to the most recent exposure and response. And what you just said is, well, I saw it over here, but I just wasn't in a position to respond. But next time I saw it, then I definitely responded. Now, it's the combination of that, and you want to give each of those touch points fractionalized credit. And that's the better way to manage media. That's multi-touch. That's what we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and I also think when you're looking at viewership habits and knowing that things are kind of evolving and changing, right? You know, a lot of times when you're watching CTV, you're in a lean back experience, right? So you're not necessarily at the ready to react or to do something. And that's really the canvassing that you need to do. That brand awareness, that canvas, you really do. And I'm not saying you can't have a KPI associated with it and looking for attribution while you're doing it, but that's really kind of canvassing the viewer or the consumer. And when you're then able to retarget them where they're more likely, I always think about like, I'm a sucker on my commute. I take the train to work. I'm on my phone. I buy things. I don't know if my husband's too happy about it, but like I've been canvassed to the different media I've seen, and then when I'm there, it's like, oh, I think I'll do this. So I think you have to like also think about the mindset people are in when they're watching and what they're thinking about doing. Subsequently, that's not for everything. I've seen certain companies during football games put QR codes up, and it's like get the jersey, and like you're in that mindset, like this is my team, I want that jersey, they're gonna win the playoffs again tonight, I want that Padres jersey. So I think you have to put your cap on about how they're viewing that channel and what's the best way to get them to respond to it. And that's where I put Patrick on the spot, because he's working through the creative. He's figuring out the best way to reach them. Like you're saying, a different creative for social versus TV.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned QR codes.
Yeah.
So like, to me, that's I don't even think because QR codes they should just be there anymore, in my opinion, just because we think that way. COVID retrained us, so it's it's a big opportunity, I think. To implement that as much as we can.
Yep. Okay.
Last chance.
I see a hand.
Ooh, we got a
hand. All right.
Good morning. My name is Alex. I manage a digitally native brand called AquaTrue, and we're going into linear TV in a few months. So my question is, my core demos are younger compared to linear TV. How do I find that middle ground when it comes to exploring the TV, like the TV audience?
Well, I would say, Alex, thanks for that question. Finding the younger audiences within linear TV is definitely a challenge. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I also think you may discover you're finding other audience out there that you might not necessarily know is there that's interested in your product or service. You can look at it contextually. You can, if it was me and you came to AudienceXpress, this is a shameless plug, but we have Comcast viewership data, so we could look to see maybe competitive brands, where they're airing, what's been working, and try to kind of target that way. But you can look at the networks that are skewing younger, the MTVs of the world. And again, it's the broad reach, it's getting your message out there. So I think you'll be shocked, as most people are when they do go make that leap into TV, how much response they do get, because people do see it and it is primed.
I was just going to say, this may answer a little bit of your question, but I just wanted to bring up the last panel a little earlier today. She mentioned about her son and how I think he said he was like 13 years old, but he has no concept of TV Guide. So like people that are under the age of 20, like now that whole idea is just so gone. Like everything has to be right there. At your fingertips. So I go back to the whole thing of libraries of content, figuring out, what are your features and benefits? What is the main thing that's going to make them want to purchase? And come up with something, an idea that's going to resonate in different facets of a campaign. And it may be that for you, it may end up being definitely more of a social play, and you may be already going down that path. But I mean, the audience is there, but certainly could be on a streaming campaign as well. So,
yeah, I would lean on hopefully your agency that has that kind of experience to advise you on how to execute an initial strategy. Yeah. There are a lot of choices out there, obviously, but a good DR agency would be able to look at competitive data. They'll be able to make determinations and recommendations based on what they know has worked historically, unless you have something that's so new that's never been tested before. But then they have ways of testing those types of concepts as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, how about a round of applause for this group? Thank you.